1 second, we're going to cue the live stream and we'll take the roll right after. And we're live. Councilmember Marshall.
Present.
Councilmember Baker.
Present.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Present.
Councilmember Kugler.
Present.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Here.
Councilmember File.
Present.
Mayor Herbig.
Here. Now, if you'd all please join me in the flag salute. All right, next on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Unless there are any objections, the agenda will stand approved. Seeing no objections, the agenda stands approved. Next up, we have a presentation for the Youth Poet Laureate. Ms. Hayashi, you want to introduce the poet?
Good evening, council members. I'm Sarah Hayashi, Director of the Arts of Kenmore. I am a Kenmore resident of 23 years. Excuse me for hiding. I would like to present this year, the Arts of Kenmore conducted a competition for exclusively to juniors or 11th graders in the city of Kenmore to compete to become Kenmore's first Youth Poet Laureate. This whole initiative was inspiration from Griffith Williams, a local poet and publisher of East Point West Press Publishing. The adjudicating panel were Griffith and Terry Bush and Chris Jarmick, also affiliated with the East Point West Press poets. But tonight we are honoring the two selections that they made. Our Youth Poet Laureate is Luke Burns. Our Youth Poet of Distinction is Sophie Lorraine Smith. They are, I'm sorry, pardon. They are accepting to hold the honorary title of Youth Poet Laureate and Youth Poet of Distinction, representing the community of Kenmore, Washington, with the utmost distinction to the best of their ability as a year of service from May 2022 through May 2023. They are obliged to create a community service project as part of their year of service, expanding the reach and platform of youth poetry by engaging peers and audiences in the region around an issue or a theme that holds special significance for them. And as well as East Point West Press Publishing will publish their works. And with that, I would like to first present Luke. Oh, actually, I will present Sophie first with her certificate, and we had medallions made. And the medallions is the lamp of learning. You're welcome. And now as I introduce Luke, I will introduce him as well as he will read his poetry. But congratulate our Youth Poet Laureate. You ready?
Okay.
He's learning to jump up and read. The guys have been practicing with them, getting him involved with a lot of other reading. Okay.
I apologize. This is on my phone. I've been working on this for a few weeks now, and not once did it occur to me to print it out. So I hope that's fine. Okay. Oh, private, keep her steady. The restraints are loose. We can breach their hole. You and Brask, watch the flank. I'll plant the explosives. We get in, eliminate the targets, and be done with this mission. It's simple. General Willow said it so plainly. I put my trust in his very words. We were just trying to breach them, that meeting full of terrible men. No one came from behind, so we took cover, grit our teeth, covered our ears, and bam, the explosion vibrated my body. We were in. Immediately, 2 to our right, round 2:30, and 1 in the corner, close to 10 o'clock. Immediately, 3 thuds. I was amazed we were using silencers, considering we just blew up a steel wall. No one was on us, yet we took cover. There was a large table, long and with rounded edges, above it, a single light bulb. In accordance to our breaching point, I slowly edged to the leftmost door. Within it, from what I saw, pitch black. All I could do was turn on night vision. Slowly, surely, I first checked the right corner from outside. I needn't worry about the 2 other doors. Willow and Brask had it covered. It was a finite room where I could see the other end from the doorway. Then, inaudibly, I entered at what felt like a snail's pace. Nothing in the front or back right corner, nothing in the back left, but directly to my left, something sprinting at me. I didn't think, I just shot. My eyes traced the knife as it fell to the ground, and next to it, a woman. Oh, 1 hole in her sternum, 1 round her spleen. Oh, Lord. Behind her, once she fell lifeless, I felt dread. A group of children huddled and crying. Oh, God. We didn't breach a terrorist meeting. We breached a shelter. She was protecting those kids, those whom we swore to protect. Oh, I grunted, sweat, and my gun shook in my hand. Clearly, they heard the ambush as Willow ran to me as I stood, still in shock. Sighting the children and the woman on the ground, he gasped, though quickly he reassured himself. He noticed me in my utter distress, inhaled, and then, oh, Private, she rushed you. We heard it. We would have done the same were we attacked like that. Oh, Private, why are you crying? You're not a monster. You didn't know. You just reacted. Surely you know too? The men we just killed, innocent, defending themselves, now utterly lifeless. General Willow, how are you able to keep it together? Are you a monster or simply strong-willed, knowing you've killed innocents? What have I done?
Thank you very much for that. Excuse me. Next on the agenda is a proclamation recognizing Youth Poet Laureate and Youth Poet of Distinction. Whereas, excuse me, the Arts of Kenmore is committed to lifting the voices of emerging youth poets, prose writers, and spoken word artists, supporting career and college readiness, and engaging youth through civic and community leadership. And whereas under these parameters, the Arts of Kenmore was inspired by Griffith H. Williams and the East Point West Press family of poets to create a Youth Poet Laureate initiative. And whereas the Arts of Kenmore and East Point West Press poets conducted a thorough juried competition under the purview of national competition guidelines. And whereas Luke Burns was selected and has accepted the honorary title of Youth Poet Laureate to represent the community of Kenmore, Washington, with utmost distinction to the best of their ability throughout life. And whereas Sophie Lorraine Smith was selected and has accepted the honorary title of Youth Poet of Distinction to represent the community of Kenmore, Washington, with utmost distinction to the best of their ability throughout life. And whereas both youth poets will serve the Kenmore community as a year of service from May 2022 through May 2023. And whereas both youth poets will release a selection of their original works to be published by East Point West Press Publishing. And whereas both youth poets will promote April Poetry Month and participate in a variety of community and regional opportunities and platforms engaging community in accessible poetry, arts, and culture. Now, therefore, I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim June 21st to be Youth Poet Laureate Day in the City of Kenmore and encourage our community to engage and support the art of poetry.
And we do invite our distinguished guests to have a photo with the council members.
All right, next on the agenda is public comment. We welcome our community members to the council's meeting. In this forum, the council does not engage in dialogue with the public. The primary role of the council is to listen. We will hear from our on-site guests first, followed by virtual guests. If you're online, please use the raise hand feature now if you wish to speak. All guests must address comments to the mayor and city council. The clerk will acknowledge your request and call your name when it is your turn. Your time will start when we can confirm that we can hear you. Please state your name and city of residence for the record and keep your comments to the allotted time. We will not split time with others or reset your time except by express approval of the presiding officer. Screen sharing is not allowed. You can submit materials to the council or clerk in advance. Please do not comment about pending development projects on which the council will make future decisions, as those are quasi-judicial matters and council members must limit their communications about such matters. This meeting is being recorded. Thank you for taking the time to express your comments. Madam Clerk.
Thank you very much, Mayor. At this point, we have no on-site public comments. No one wishing to speak that's on site, but we do have virtual comments. Would you like to proceed with those?
Of course.
Okay, stand by. At this point, we do see quite a big group. We're going to go ahead and promote all of you, but we'll take the first three in this order. Jeffrey Pooley, followed by Matthew Halls and Stacy V.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can stand by while we get the timer ready.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Herbig and City Council. I am making this comment to voice my support for the Plymouth housing proposal. I am happy to see the proposal of 100 units of below 30% AMI residents. And also Plymouth has clearly demonstrated their understanding of the housing crisis and use of research-based best practice solutions, specifically their housing first model, continuum of care focus, and permanent supportive housing model are all key to helping residents achieve long-term housing stability. My family, resident of Kenmore, lives less than 1,000 feet from the proposed site. We would be able to see it from our house. The downtown area and these housing units and its residents are a part of our neighborhood just as much as other single family houses along our street. And we are glad that our community is committed to supporting a diversity of housing such as the supportive housing project in our neighborhood. Here are a few specific thoughts about the proposal. Number one, I'm glad that Plymouth has prioritized preservation of the old growth tree on the lot. Number two, I appreciate the community-focused courtyard, especially considering how close the building will be to the library and the rest of downtown. Number 3, I appreciate the thoughtfulness about consistent design with the surrounding buildings. And number 4, the planned housing case managers, behavioral health officers, and other support staff preempts any potential safety concerns I may have as someone with young children nearby. They've clearly demonstrated their knowledge and understanding of how best to integrate a housing project like this in our neighborhood. I also want to express support for the transit-oriented development approach, specifically that the proposal does not mandate or propose excess parking. This location particularly is ideal for zero-car households with close access to grocery, pharmacy, and other key services. Low-income households like those served by this project are more than double or triple as likely as mid-income or high-income households to not have a car. And this project will enable these residents to not be burdened by the cost of a car or parking structure. The vision of the Kenmore downtown is a commercial and community space, not a parking lot. If parking downtown is a concern, we should consider paid parking solutions that enable this vision. Research and evidence has demonstrated that paid parking solutions provide access and convenience for those who need it, while encouraging less reliance on cars generally. I appreciate the council's thoughtfulness in selecting development partners for our city, and I trust that you will continue to be thoughtful with questions and direction as design and engineering plans are developed. Thank you so much, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew Halls?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can go ahead.
Okay, thank you for listening tonight, Kenmore City Council. My name is Matt Halls, and I'm a resident of Bothell, but a landlord in Kenmore. First off, I wanted to thank the council and council member File in particular for reaching out and meeting with a group of small landlords. I'd also like to thank Mayor Herbig for acknowledging during last week's meeting, that what we've been saying all along, that we were left out of the conversation when the first round of tenant protections were discussed. We appreciate being included in the conversation in regards to the 2 additional ordinances the city is considering adopting: the just cause eviction protections and the ban on abusive, deceptive, and unfair practices in rental housing. We will be participating and providing feedback, but I'm curious as to why there was no mention of the small landlord exemption. Last week, we had a spirited session of comments from both the tenant right advocates, small landlords, and large landlords in Kenmore. I rewatched all the comments, and despite all the surveys, studies, and figures presented by both residents, by both sides of the argument, I felt the most compelling comments I heard were from the Kenmore residents themselves, not the busload of tenant advocates from Seattle and California and beyond. Those were real stories of Kenmore residents and their challenges with providing housing for Kenmore tenants. I watched the entire meeting and was confused at the outcome. The small landlord exemption was discussed at length, was voted on several times, and then at the end, it was tabled. What does that mean? I have heard various proposals for either a small group discussion suggested by Councilmember File or the large community session suggested by Councilmember Baker. What is the next step in this process? Thank you, and I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you very much. Before we hear from Stacy V, I want to check in with Councilmember Kugler and Councilmember Baker. Do you still hear us?
Yes, I hear you fine.
Very good. Stacy V?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. As I have commented hundreds of times, we desperately need affordable housing at the 30% and below AMI, and think this project has been designed caringly, and thank you for Mr. Pooley for supporting. We call on Kenmore to stand up and enforce the climate action plan, with action starting with the city staff, which includes restoration, preservation, and protection of all our creeks, land, wetlands, rivers, culverts, and shoreline to the natural habitat and ecosystems in land management and permits, therefore decreasing the effect of greenhouse gases, other toxins in our water, land, and climate. Deny permits with encroachment and variances on these precious resources. This includes this city. Kenmore has had so much contamination in groundwater in several sites, some needing soils removed 4 times. We know our stormwater goes into the rivers and Lake Washington with dioxins and contamination, but little is done to stop this. The city permits development continues. We know wetlands are necessary for flood control, yet encroachment is allowed and little is done to stop this. We know how easily washing cars, diesel on land, that we see the sheen flowing down the street when it rains and petroleum in our air, landing in our water and land, human and dog poop bacteria seeping into our stormwater, yet little is being done to stop this. We need to protect our stormwater. We need to start with the biggest offenders. Governor Inslee called to add the Climate Commitment Act. King County Executive and King County Council and local legislators called for cities to add Bill 1099 to comp plans. We need these stipulations added and implemented. There are 2.3 million in grant funds that are available to support early implementation and adoption of 1099, which 3 highlights are housing, affordable, social justice, and model policy for the tree canopy and heat island impacts. We can do this. The 3 resident surveys from 2019 actions show they're still not being a priority. This should be reflected in city performance evaluations. The number 1 was natural parks and trails. The city is cementing parks and disturbing wetlands. The second was a community center. The city built a public boathouse with no public access. So putting a playground near City Hall when there is already quite a few, as well as plans for a pocket park on the Murphy development and a dog park in Kirkland, which already has a dog park, is missing from the pros plan, where any request from residents for a boathouse, kayak club, playground, or sports field. I think Kenmore can do so much better with transparency. Use social media. We also appreciate the updated positions on the items for meeting agendas and would like to also see tally vote. In all these areas, I know we could do better. We need to show we love Kenmore by keeping our city a treasure. Thank you for consideration tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Valenzuela. Dakota Rash, followed by Chris O. and Tracy Benishinsky. Dakota Rash,
Hello, can you hear me?
barely. Try again.
Well, the sex.
It looks like you're muted.
Is that any better?
A little bit. Go ahead.
Okay, my apologies, headphone issues. Dakota Rash, I'm a resident of Lake Forest Park. Thank you all for the time tonight. So cities grow, I get that. I have issues when it's done in certain ways, but that's a broader topic for another day. But tonight I do want to comment on this Twin Springs project that Kenmore is proposing and the trend it demonstrates. All too often, when you scrutinize the way a city is trying to grow, especially when you have the environment at heart, you come across the topic of parking. Reviewing the Twin Springs plan with Tracy and others, that element really stuck out to me in particular. It's always about parking. We want to put parking everywhere. Not only is that not the direction we need to go, emphasizing cars as the default of our society, why don't we ever talk about parks instead of parking? So much talk of where we park cars, but nothing about where we can preserve parks for people. We don't seem to be anywhere near as desperate to preserve green space as we are to slap on some more concrete. Also, this is described as being a neighborhood park. I just want to throw out there that if there were truly an adequate level of them, neighborhood parks shouldn't be a thing that need parking. They should be walked to. Furthermore, Kenmore is a network of wetlands and slopes. They come in different technical grades and levels of documentation, sure, but there is no doubt they form our foundation. When we continuously slap down concrete square after concrete rectangle, we suffocate these foundational ecosystems. We prevent water from flowing along nature's intent and seeping into the soil, nurturing plants that hold down the ground beneath our feet. We clumsily try to direct it into specific areas, thereby eroding them. The upcoming decades of climate extremes are only going to compound upon this bad behavior. Our beloved Doug firs and western red cedars will dry up and die, and the foundations of our homes will erode away under misdirected stormwater. We need to take a different approach. We need to stop impacting Kenmore's natural areas. We need to break up with this obsession with concrete. Doing so, and understanding this direction that we need to grow in, is going to be absolutely vital in building a city that can remain resilient in the future. So please think carefully about undertaking endeavors like this. They could be portrayed as improving access to parks, sure, but are we really doing that in the right way? Are we really leaving nature alone as we need to? And since I have a little extra time, I'll also say I fully support having strong tenant protections and truly affordable housing. These concerns of justice are just as vital in ensuring that everyone can remain safe and healthy in an upcoming future that will be filled with some struggles, but hopefully we can make our way through them as a strong community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rash. Chris O, followed by Tracy Panashinsky and James Olson. Chris O.
Hello. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the low-income housing development, the Plymouth housing development. I'm here to speak in support of it, and also to support or voice my support at least for the limited parking that is being used at this location and how that aligns with the city's values. I would also, I'm hoping to see in the future sidewalks being developed along that side to further improve access for residents in that development to the downtown core of Kenmore and safe routes to the store and other places along 61st Ave. I'd have to double check that one there. I would also like to voice my support of these previous people speaking about limiting parking and looking at using paid parking solutions in order to figure out how much parking is actually needed. Oftentimes parking is something that is evaluated by how much it is full for commuters, and that is not necessarily helping the residents of Kenmore. That's potentially helping people who live elsewhere and are using Kenmore as a parking lot to get closer to work where there is high availability of mass transit. I think that improving the local city and community by making areas more walkable, bikeable, and safe to walk and bike is key. And given the number of pedestrian conflicts that we've seen, this is not something that has been done in the past, and 522 makes that a challenge. The other thing I would like to voice my support for is limiting the use of parking in limiting the use of parkings at parks and other places like this, and instead trying to increase how walkable and bikeable those parks are, or getting to those parks is, I should say. I would also like to work perhaps towards getting boardwalks through some of these wetlands to increase the connectivity for pedestrian and cyclist transport, as additional travel distances to these modes of transit have significantly higher impacts than to cars as the travel speeds are lower. That being said, it's a difficult thing and it costs a lot when you're dealing with environmental mitigation, especially through wetlands. So I understand if that is going to take time or these projects will be paused. So once again, happy to see the Plymouth low-income housing development. I'd really like to see that go through. Thank you. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Chris, could we just get your full name and city of residence for the record, please?
Yes, sorry. I'm Christopher Olson and my city of residence is Kenmore. I moved in November.
Thank you. Tracy Panashinsky.
Hi, Tracy Panashinsky, Kenmore. It is not officially open yet, but I have been visiting Twin Springs Park for at least a year now. Every time I visit, I feel as if I have stumbled into a place apart. It feels like wilderness, spacious, quiet, and also alive with the sounds of nature. Birds and frogs, leaves and grass moving in the breeze, water running over rocks and woody debris, and beavers warning me that they know about my presence with sharp tail slaps on the surface of their magnificent pond. It is true sanctuary. The city of Kenmore has recently submitted a plan to SEPA review for phase 1 improvements to the park. They've applied to refurbish the old parking lot at the south end of the site and to build a new parking lot at the north end, along with a maintenance shed, a 5x5 foot concrete porta potty pad, and 170 feet of maintenance pathway. Approximately 200 cubic feet of native soil would be excavated for the parking lot and pathway. The ground would be compacted and crushed rock would go on top. All things considered, this is better than asphalt or concrete, but still I have questions. First, nothing in the proposal for SEPA review for the north end of the park is in the site master plan, which was developed after 2 community engagement meetings and an online survey in 2017. Further, the SEPA application says that a future community garden and walking trails are proposed. Walking trails are in the site master plan, but a community garden is not. I am curious about the openness and transparency of engaging the community in the early design process, creating a master plan based on that engagement, and then doing something completely different. Master plans are not always right, and we should not necessarily carry them out no matter what. Sometimes we have bad ideas and we come to see things in a different way. And in those instances, it behooves us to change course. However, it does not strike me as being the case here. So who decided about the improvements to the north end of the park, and what community feedback was incorporated into that decision-making process? My second question is, why are we proposing to build any kind of parking lot in a natural area full of environmentally sensitive ecosystems? If this is a neighborhood park instead of a destination park, most people should be arriving by foot or by bike. Why not a bike rack? For those who must travel by car, there is abundant street parking, a whole cutout on 80th Avenue Northeast, more than would be provided by the North End parking lot. Why not make that street safer for pedestrian crossings? There is also the existing parking lot at the south end of the park and a whole sea of asphalt at the church kitty corner from the park. Why not try out an interlocal agreement between the city and church to share a few parking spots in a lot that is empty outside of Sunday service times? In a community that is moving in the Strong Towns direction of minimizing parking and finding ways to improve pedestrian and bike access to city amenities by designing streets for people and not for cars, why are we proposing to do things the same old way? I have so many questions. Thank you so much, as always, for your leadership and your service to our community. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. James Olson? You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, I guess before I get, can you let me talk, please, Chris? Thank you. Sorry, my son wants to talk instead, it sounds like. First, I wanted to say thank you to Tracy. I'm really impressed. That was awesome. Now I'll get started with me. I'm James Olson. I live on 62nd Avenue in Kenmore, and really close to Chris Olson. First, I wanted to thank the city for putting in the traffic circles on 62nd Avenue Northeast. It's slowing down the traffic. It's actually one of the key reasons I bought a house here. And I also want to thank them for the abutments put on 68th. Again, I would not have bought a house here if it wasn't for those sorts of traffic safety things. Cars go too fast otherwise. If you get complaints from people about this, it's because, sorry, just a second. What, Danielle? Okay. I'm getting interrupted. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Second, I wanted to thank you for your work on the low-income housing proposal model. My son has autism, and it's deeply gratifying to see our community is not closed-minded about keeping everyone out. Finally, I support the transit-oriented movements that you're making. We have way too much parking already. We don't need more of it. In fact, the problem I have is we're already overly car dependent, and what happens now is instead of using other forms of transportation like walking, biking, and mass transit, we're using cars all the time. Hence, we're thinking like a hammer, and now everything's becoming a nail. So it's important to stop thinking in this manner and start thinking about a more mixed form of transportation that is much less impactful on the environment, much more affordable for our city, and much more efficient. With that, I'll give back my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Olson. Mayor Herbig, at this point, I see no additional hands raised.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for, it looks like we have one hand just popped up.
Let me check in with Mr. Michaelman. Stand by. Mr. Michaelman, did you wish to speak?
Yes, and what's amazing, I've had my hand up since the beginning of this meeting. So can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Okay, hold on one sec. All right. Carl Michaelman, business owner and non-resident, according to Karina File. Last week, you guys had a meeting and you all came to some consensus that you would go ahead and you agreed that you really rushed this tenant's right thing. And unfortunately, you're just going to still go through it. After you agreed, we really rushed it. I want you to understand, there's nothing in this for me with this tenant stuff, okay? With the tenant's rights and so forth. I don't own a rental. But what concerns me is the economic issues that this is going to happen to, dealing with people are talking about the TOD. You're not going to get developers in if they go ahead and have to do this with tenants. So it's great if we go ahead and have low income housing, but developers are not going to come in. One developer made a purchase and sale agreement, and you guys know who it was, and they pulled out of it. What is wrong with that picture? In addition, what happened was, yes, last meeting you were comparing the Kenmore Business Alliance registration to this landlord registration. Well, for sure, you need to understand that the Kenmore Business Alliance decided that they were going to do this registration, and the money that was made from it was going to go back into the Kenmore Business Alliance through going ahead and having meetings out with the public and so forth. You talk about this tenants registration, all that's going to do is they're going to be paying more money to you. The landlords get nothing for it. And then again, like they were saying, the administrative costs for this is going to be costly too. And again, that will go back to our tax dollars. So with that being said, I just want to come back and say, you guys need to put a hold on the tenant right issue. You need to get the people involved. You can't come to me and say there's a consensus that you rushed it, but then on the other side of the coin, you're still going to go through with it. It makes no sense. It shows me how this council is very out of touch with the citizens and business owners of Kenmore. Thank you.
Mr. Muckman, could we get your city of residence for the record, please?
Breyer.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Nigel.
Mayor Herberg, there's no additional hands raised.
All right, next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing no discussion, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Aye.
Councilmember Kugler,
Aye.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Srebnick,
Yes.
Mayor Herberg,
Yes.
Councilmember File,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, next on the agenda is the first part of our business agenda. First item, approval of affordable housing development proposal presented by Assistant City Manager Stephanie Lukash and guests from Plymouth Housing, Arch, and the University of Washington Capstone team.
Good evening. So happy to be here. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. We're going to talk to you tonight about the Plymouth Housing at Kenmore project, and excited to share with you some next steps and some recommendations. I wanted to share on this opening slide some name ideas we've been thinking about, and lift, propel, launch, take flight. The reason why we thought of those is because that's what we're doing with the residents, right? We're helping them succeed. So I wanted to mention that. Go to the next slide. So the purpose of tonight's meeting, we're going to talk about the proposal. We have 3 motions for your consideration tonight. And we also want to thank and acknowledge the vast group that helped us get to this point. So we're going to spend some time on that tonight. I think it's important. It's been a lot of work to get us to this stage.
And as each of you know very well, your number 1 priority for 21-22 is affordable housing. And this entire project really exemplifies that and helps to address the housing crisis in King County.
Good evening, council members. I'm Elsa Kings. I am the Housing Trust Fund Manager at Arch. I am excited to present the overall project here at the Plymouth Housing at Kenmore project. As you know, the project proposes 100 units of affordable housing, a mix of studios and one-bedroom units, all at a whopping 100% at 30% AMI. The population will have a mix of seniors, individuals with disability, and formerly homeless individuals. It is a walkable site. It has great access to downtown Kenmore and a wonderful transportation options. The total estimated cost of the project is $37.5 million.
Good evening, I'm Karen Peterson, Chief Real Estate Officer at Plymouth, and I have the pleasure of sharing Plymouth's mission. For 40 years, Plymouth has ended homelessness one person at a time. We provide permanent supportive housing to people who've experienced chronic homelessness. We operate 15 buildings in Seattle, which are home to about 1,100 residents a year. Plymouth works to eliminate homelessness and address its causes by preserving, developing, and operating safe, quality, supportive housing, and by providing homeless adults with opportunities to stabilize and improve their lives. Plymouth's housing model and its compassion and commitment to the dignity of our residents has resulted in 97% of Plymouth's residents succeeding in maintaining permanent housing after leaving homelessness.
Good evening, council members. It's great to be with you again. I'm the real estate developer that will be working on this project. And you've seen some of this before, but for the public that hasn't seen it, I want to share a little bit about the project design. Was really happy to hear some of the comments tonight about some of the choices we made with working with our wonderful architect, Environmental Works, who came up with a beautiful design. This is a high quality, cost efficient, sustainable design. As was mentioned in the comments, we incorporated a community courtyard because we really want this to be a space where the community is invited in and our residents really become a part of the community. It being close to the library, preserving the large tree, it'll be a really beautiful space for the community to gather. We also have wonderful resident amenity spaces, which include a community room, community kitchen, case management office space, and a nurse's office that can serve our residents. We also have commercial space that we are pursuing a partnership with Bastyr Community Clinic. We have had some preliminary conversations and we're really excited to move forward with this partnership. This is a close-up of some of the units. We have a mix of one bedrooms and studios. As was mentioned before, there will be 100 units, and the layout really incorporates a wonderful living space for our residents, including a kitchen, a living area, a bedroom, and we will provide all furniture and appliances that will be energy efficient for our residents. This is just a closer look at the first floor and then the subsequent upper floors that will have residential spaces. In total, we'll have 6 stories. So as you can see, the courtyard is a huge part of this preliminary design with our wonderful service center that includes enough space for housing case managers, a nurse, a community room, residents often gather to have open mic nights, community meetings, or just gathering to share a meal. It's really a wonderful space, and I envision the courtyard becoming a really big part of that. Additionally, we have some lovely commercial space northeast Bothell Way that will be visible from the street. I also heard mentioned that people are happy with how walkable and accessible this project is to public transportation and to the downtown corridor of Kenmore. And we're really excited about that feature as well. So the upper floors, this is a example of a layout on the right there of how units will be lined up. We have some patio space, a lobby, and a lounge area for residents to enjoy. Just a lot of really wonderful features that the residents will be able to take advantage of.
So I'd like to share an estimated timeline and budget. Should approval of the motions be granted this evening, Plymouth will then follow up by bringing a resolution before its board of directors to request approval to enter into a development agreement and apply for funding. Our preliminary budget is estimated at $37.5 million. The project is very fortunate and we will be in good footing when we apply for additional funding due to the donation of land, the $3 million of Arch Trust funds, and $3.2 million of ARPA funds. We will apply to the Washington State Department of Commerce for additional HTF funds. Those applications are due in September and awards should be announced in December. We'll also apply for an allocation of 9% tax credits. Sorry, that's my cat. Applications are due in December and awards would be in January of 2023. We've already engaged with King County Housing Authority for project-based vouchers and will formally apply for service and operating funds in 2023. We anticipate a summer-fall 2023 construction start and completion the end of 2024 with lease up to follow.
We wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about roles and responsibilities since this is a partnership as we move forward. And as you see, we have a terrific partner in Plymouth, and they will be the lead agency leading all our funding applications and funding asks. And as was mentioned, Environmental Works and Walsh Construction are also part of the Plymouth team, as well as Arch and the city team. And so you've met Karen Peterson and Elizabeth Murphy, and Lindsay Masters and Elsa at Arch. And then myself and Samantha will be the contacts at the city. So that will be the team. And I did want to spend some time thanking the Affordable Housing Working Group that brought us to this point. The group started meeting last summer and have worked really hard. We identified properties, as you know. We evaluated those and decided on the top ones. We issued the RFP. We evaluated those proposals. We selected Plymouth, and we also had a terrific capstone team that produced a report from the University of Washington, and we're going to hear from them in a couple of minutes. As we now move forward with the Plymouth project, we're going to be reimagining the working group and focusing our efforts on other affordable housing projects in Kenmore. We're excited about that. But before we do turn the corner on this work, I wanted to thank all of the people who were part of the working group. So myself, Debbie Bent, John Vicente, Lori Anderson, Samantha, and also Brian Hampson and Nancy Owsley, who are no longer with the city, but were participating from the beginning. And then thanking Lindsay Masters and Elsa from Arch. And then our 4 terrific UW graduate students, Bill McQueen, Jen Rogers, Johnny Wheeler, and Michaela Wright-Petrick. So I wanted to spend a couple of minutes, and I'd love to have, I see 3 of them are in the audience tonight, so I'd love to welcome them to the table. And then also Michaela, I think she's here with us, if we can promote her as a panelist. I wanted to just say that this opportunity to work with this group of graduate students was just really a wonderful opportunity. We're so grateful for them. And they produced the report that you see in the packet. It was just a fabulous piece of work. I'm so grateful for all their effort. And I wanted to give them a chance to say a few words about their experience and their reflections as they worked with the city of Kenmore. They have all graduated from the University of Washington and now are on to their next endeavors. So come on up, team. So whichever of you would like to go first, I invited all of the students to tell us a little bit more about their experience and their reflections.
First, I would just like to thank the City Council for making affordable housing their top priority in commissioning this project and bringing us along for that. I'm deeply appreciative also for having the ability to interrogate the housing discrimination in the Puget Sound region and using that reasoning to further support affordable housing development. And specifically, I am appreciative for being along on the ride to have these weekly discussions with Stephanie and the team and learning the behind the scenes details of affordable housing development. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jen Rogers. First, I wanted to echo Johnny's thoughts here and thanking the
Jen,
council.
hold on. I want to make sure we can hear you. Is your mic activated?
I think so. Does that
Yeah,
sound better?
you got to speak real close, uncomfortably close. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Of course. Again, well, my name is Jen Rogers, and I just wanted to echo Johnny's comments about thanking the council and Stephanie for providing this opportunity to us. It's been great to really capitalize on all of the skills that we learned in our program and to be able to use those skills to further benefit the projects here in Kenmore. A couple of things that I really enjoyed learning a little bit more about. Part of our project was interviewing other cities in the Puget Sound region on what their strategies were for affordable housing. So it was really exciting to kind of see how each jurisdiction used the resources they have available to further increase housing in their area dependent on their community's needs and also their proximity maybe to major transit or to other city centers. And it was also really exciting to learn a little bit more about other legislative strategies that are coming up in Olympia on how to increase opportunities for housing and provide, a little bit more ideas for Kenmore to pull from when looking at other projects as well. And finally, I just wanted to thank Stephanie, as she's been a really great mentor for our team on how to work on housing in a city capacity. And she really gave us every opportunity to join the working team, the meetings with the city and with Arch and other organizations. And so we're just very appreciative of the work that we got to do for Kenmore. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I close enough? All right. Similar to what Jen was saying is that Stephanie brought us into this group and we had, front row seats and to a large extent a seat at the table. And what I took away from it was looking at this group that was so collaborative within itself and inclusive within itself. And it was really a pleasure to be and observe that occur. And then the circle of folks that we joined grew a little bit. And then it grew a little bit more and included, Karen and her team and the other people that were bidding on the RFP. And it was remarkable. The folks that were not successful all came back and said how grateful they were for the opportunity. And then tonight we're hearing the citizens talking about their joy of it. And soon you'll be including folks laying their heads down in that beautiful building. So it's been really heartwarming to experience that.
And Michaela Wright is in the audience, Stephanie.
Wonderful. We'd love to hear from you, Michaela.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm Michaela. Thank you all again for having us. I'm so grateful to the City of Kenmore for welcoming us to participate in the process. It's been great to see Kenmore moving forward with this and to witness all the work that's been going on in the past few months. For me personally, it's been amazing to see how ARPA funds are being used productively and how they will benefit this community and the individuals that get to live in this building and other affordable housing developments in the future. So I just want to thank Stephanie and the rest of the Kenmore team.
And we wish them all the best in their post-graduation life. Thank you again. This team has been terrific. I just can't say enough about them. And they just really did fold into our work and they became full-fledged members of our team and were instrumental in getting us to this point. And so they deserve all our thanks. So thank you for everything you've done. And I'm just, last thing I'm going to say is 2 of them have indicated they're interested in affordable housing as a career. So I think that says a lot about Kenmore and the work that they've done with us. We wish them well in their job search. So thank you very much. Next slide, please. Oh, is it? Oh, there we go. Thank you so much. So here we are. So we have 3 motions for your consideration tonight. The first is to approve the selection of the Plymouth proposal. The second has to do with the ARPA funds. And the third is the providing staff direction to proceed with the agreements. So I'll turn it back to the mayor and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments? Okay, not seeing any questions. Okay, it looks like Councilmember Baker's raised his hand.
Yes, I am really grateful to see this coming to fruition. I know when I was on the Joint Resolutions Committee that awarded funding for low-income housing, this was always in the forefront of my decisions, looking for housing at the 30% level. And I'm so thankful to see this coming. It's I've been fighting for it for a long time. I know on the Regional Housing Task Force, that's all I was talking about, was funding at the 30% level. And so I am so happy that Plymouth Group has come forward. And I want to thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Councilmember Marshall.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you all. I think this is a great step towards equity in Kenmore, no question about it. My hope and my dream, I realize it may not be realizable, but is that the height might be reconsidered on this design phase. We also treasure, I think, our view of the lake, and I'd like to see if anything can be done on that. But otherwise, it's a great project.
Councilmember Kugler.
Thank you. I also want to thank Plymouth Housing for this proposal. I'm really excited to see it move forward, but I also want to thank the University of Washington Capstone team. For those who are on this meeting or for anyone who watches this, I highly recommend reading that report. There is so much great information in there and looks at our approach to affordable housing from so many different angles and points out how unique our approach has been, and I think speaks to why it's been a success in getting interested partners and funding. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm very thankful for that team for doing such thorough research. Thank you.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. I really appreciate this hard work and dedication. This has been my #1 goal, is affordable housing for Kenmore for a long time. And the dream of attaching affordable housing land trust to drive down that cost and make it a real affordable, tangible housing is finally coming to fruition, and I couldn't be more grateful for your hard work and efforts. I still have the one concern about how to address in the design development phase, how to address the disparity of connected to socioeconomic class and environment. So when we're looking at this highly vulnerable population of seniors, disabled persons, persons of differences, I prefer to say, and veterans living next to 522, a road with higher amounts of carbon dioxide. We know the health disparities are going to be increased, lung sensitivity, asthma, COPD, right? And when we think about the social determinants of health and environment, the solution has to come through to the design. So beyond baseboard heat and lack of cooling, I'm concerned, what is the plan for possibly addressing these issues to create a positive, healthy solution that will improve the quality of health and life of these individuals living so close to increased carbon emissions? As a question.
Great. Does either Elizabeth or Karen would like to answer that?
Sure, I can speak to that. Thank you so much for bringing that up. That is something of concern to us as well, and I really appreciate that you mentioned that. What we will do is work with our architect and additional subcontractors so that we can minimize the issues of carbon impact on the people. So that is something that we will consider and definitely talk to our architect about that.
Any further questions, comments? Deputy Mayor?
I just want to chime in a thank you on the high quality work that this team has done. And I want to thank each of you for coming here and talking about your experience and sharing what a good thing it was. So makes our city proud to hear those comments, and certainly thankful for our high quality city staff that opened the door to as they move forward with this housing project. It's really exciting, and it was really cool to hear what you said. You backed it up. So thank you. It's going to be here before we know it. And I hope you come to celebrate with us when it opens.
And I'll reiterate what my colleagues have said. I'm still, I think, picking my jaw up off the floor from the meeting about a month ago when we were told it'd be 100% at 30% AMI. I'm just still gobsmacked by that. This is one of the more exciting things to happen on my time in council. So I'm just really excited about this project. Unless there's any further comments, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the selection of the proposal submitted by Plymouth Housing in response to City RFP 22-2789 and authorize the city to move forward with creating a partnership with Plymouth Housing and a regional coalition for housing to develop affordable housing consistent with the Plymouth Housing proposal.
So moved.
Councilmember File.
All right, we've got a motion from Councilmember Baker, second from Councilmember File. Any further discussion? Seeing no discussion, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember File.
Aye.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik. Yes. Councilmember Baker.
An enthusiastic yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay. The chair would entertain a motion to allocate $3.2 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds for the development of affordable housing in the city consistent with the Plymouth Housing proposal.
So moved. Councilmember File.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Kugler.
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yes.
Councilmember File.
Aye.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, and finally, the chair would entertain a motion to provide staff direction to initiate negotiations with Plymouth Housing and/or Arch for a property transfer agreement, development agreement, and any other necessary agreements.
So
So
moved.
moved.
All right. I think we have a motion from the deputy mayor, second from Councilmember Baker. Any further discussion? Seeing no discussion. Oh, Councilmember Shrubnik.
Just a quick comment. I think Stephanie made it pretty clear, but you know, this is a wonderful and delicate partnership. So we just want to be super clear about roles, and if we have questions to, you know, go through our city staff and recognize that Plymouth is the expert in terms of finding the funding. Yeah, and that's in our role is at this point, for the moment, kind of watching and being excited.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
Councilmember File.
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yes.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Really looking forward to all of this. Next on the agenda is first reading of ordinance 22-0546, proposing a cable utility tax presented by Finance Administration Director Leticia Salcedo.
Over this slide. I had a couple of presentations. There was another one subsequent to this. I'm trying to find the newest one. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. The item before you, I'm sorry, that's not the slide. That's not the presentation. Sorry about that. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. The item before you for your review and consideration is a revenue enhancement measure that was approved as part of the financial sustainability plan. The city of Kenmore has adopted balanced budgets and maintained a healthy fund balance over the years. But in 2019, the financial forecast, the 6-year financial forecast, demonstrated a structural deficit. There was a gap between revenues and expenditures, which would result in a reduction in fund balance of negative $1.3 million by the year 2028. The reasons were a combination of restrictions on property tax growth, unfunded mandates, flat or little growth in other revenues, and then growth in operating revenues, which were not keeping up with the cost of providing city services. The city of Kenmore retained an independent consultant and management partners, and then they reviewed the financial condition for the city and assisted in developing a financial sustainability plan. That plan was developed with input from the community and a task force that was developed for that endeavor. The financial sustainability plan, The financial sustainability plan was a combination of expenditure reductions and revenue enhancements. Expenditure reductions were included economic development, communications, federal lobbyists. So it's just a combination of various cuts to reduce expenditures. There was also revenue enhancements proposed in the financial sustainability plan, one of which is, and the first one, is the cable utility tax in the amount of 6%. The goal of the financial sustainability plan was to strengthen the city's financial position and be able to maintain a fund balance that would equal at least 20% of operating expenditures, which is the policy for the city. Supporting the revenue enhancement per the consultant review, it was that the city of Kenmore revenues in comparison to other cities were relatively low. And I have a slide for that presentation. Okay. There. So what this slide shows is the per capita utility tax revenue. As you know, the cable utility tax, the city has currently a natural and electric gas natural gas and electric utility tax. So what the revenues combined for the city total $48.63 per capita. That's the total utility tax revenues divided by the population for the city. And in comparison with the other cities, that is relatively low. As you can see, the city of Bothell is at 179.71, 173 for Mercer Island, and so on and so on. The average for the medium for utility tax is 121.27. As you can see from this slide as well, is that the Kenmore, the highlighted one, cable is 0, water is 0, sewer is 0. So the only utility taxes for the city are natural gas, electricity, and telecommunications, which is your cellular and your telephone. The cable utility tax, as mentioned, is in the rate would be a 6%. It's exclusively on cable. It does not include internet. And the amount, what I did is these are the various packages for TV services. And as you can see, it starts at 40, it goes to 70 for the popular plan. Then there is the ultimate plan at $88.50. I calculated the cable utility tax on the highest priced package, and that it would be 5.31. 6% of the $88.50 is the $5.31 per month.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Just a quick question, since we don't have cable at our house. So is this monthly?
That is a monthly amount, yes.
Okay, so
And
at the kind of worst case scenario, you're talking about $5 a month. kinda. Is
$5.31.
it- Yeah, okay.
Based on this, now there is, as you know, additional, what do they call them? Packages, more expensive with, yes, but this is your basic cable. So at this point in time, as mentioned, this is a financial sustainability revenue enhancement measure that we still recommend at this point in time. Back in 2020, the inflation rate was, I believe, 0%, 1%. The inflation rate at this point in time is 8.5%. Costs continue to increase. The cost of providing services continues to increase, and we need to be able to improve our revenue condition to be able to absorb those costs in the future. And thank you. And this is the first reading. And July 11, we'll be bringing this back for your consideration and if approved, adoption of ordinance.
Looks like we have a question from Councilmember Baker.
Yeah, is this proposal on the basic lowest rate of cable? In other words, the lowest necessary to get local channels?
Exactly, yes.
Thank you.
6%.
Any other questions? Councilmember Shrubnik.
I don't know if this is getting at Councilmember Baker comment, because it may be similar to what my question was. So this is a tax on top of whatever cable program that the household has, right? It's 6% of whatever you are purchasing as a cable program in your home.
Exactly.
Okay.
If you have HBO, then that's additional, yes.
Any further questions? All right, well, thank you so much for the presentation. You said this is coming back July
11.
July 11th. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, next we have two public hearings. First one is on ordinance 22-0551 related to adoption of the 2021 King County Surface Water Design Manual and adopting the 2021 King County Stormwater Pollution Prevention Manual. It looks like we have Mr. Sawyer here to present.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Excellent. I just wanted to provide a brief introduction to this public hearing regarding Ordinance 22-0551, which adopts the 2021 King County Surface Water Design Manual and the 2021 King County Stormwater Pollution Prevention Manual. Every 4 to 6 years, King County provides an update to these manuals to comply with updates to the region's NPDES permits and to maintain equivalency with the Department of Ecology's surface water design standards, which the city then adopts. This adoption replaces the 2016 manuals currently being used by the city and provides compliance with the city's NPDES permit and aligns with the goals and policies provided in the city's comprehensive plan. Updates to the manual predominantly include clarifications and minor textual corrections and updates to modeling requirements and source control best management practices. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Herbig to open the public hearing.
The public hearing is now open. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for the public hearing?
Thank you, Mayor. At this point, we have no one signed up to speak on site.
Is there anybody in the audience who wants to? It looks like Ms. Valenzuela has raised her hand. If anybody else in the virtual audience wishes to comment, I would encourage you to raise your hand now. Let's go to Ms. Valenzuela.
Ms. Valenzuela, can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me again?
We can. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was under the impression that Ecology met and just disclosed new updates in a session in June. And we know how several properties have water vaults and holding tanks in Kenmore, but are they really able to collect the water or are they overflowing? Because we see floods at many corners and we see water with sheen flowing down from known MODCA sites. We'd like to request that DOE and EPA, as well as other environmental organizations, not just one, those associated with water and shoreline protection, also be consulted prior to the changes in adoption. And the consulting companies, they don't always have the resident human or wildlife preservation at the forefront, as their job is working with city staff, and they do not always meet or hear what the residents have to say and suggest on the best environmental practices. We need to educate, protect, and enforce offenders of the contamination to our stormwater, which then contaminates our creeks, rivers, and the lake. And we need water testing, and I'm hoping that that's in there somewhere. And we need it posted so that it is published for our residents to see. And unless Kenmore takes the steps to exceed, not just be at that same level, we need to do better than the 2021 Surface and Stormwater Plan. I ask you to incorporate the new DOE recommendations that were presented this month in June for the 2024 base testing. I think it needs to come forward, and I think we need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valenzuela. There are no further hands raised.
Is there anybody else wishing to be heard? Looks like Chris Olson has his hand up.
Chris Olson, can you hear us?
All right, can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, my name is Chris Olson and I'm a resident of Kenmore. I live on 62nd Avenue. I did miss a piece of this. I had to step away for a moment, which is why I raised my hand late, so apologies for that. But one thing that I'm hoping to see with stormwater design in the city is looking at having roadways and existing impacts accounted for going forwards. Oftentimes I have seen trail projects or sidewalk projects or other low resource projects that need additional funding in order to meet stormwater requirements simply end or not occur because the cost of mitigating for stormwater isn't feasible given the project budget. And this isn't because accounting or mitigating stormwater is bad, but rather because of our historical priorities. So we'll spend a bunch of money building a roadway. We've built a bunch of roadway. Money to do so. So potentially implementing a tax on roadway projects or parking lots or whatever to use that money to help support less impactful forms of transportation that don't create as much impervious surface area going forwards. I'm not sure if this is the right place to speak about that or the right time, but I figured I'd just mention it after what I was just seeing. So anyways, thank you. Bye. And I'll yield the rest of my time.
Is there anybody else wishing to be heard? Anybody else wishing to be heard? Is there anybody else wishing to be heard? Okay, with that, we don't have any hands up, do we? All right, I'm going to declare the public hearing closed. Next up, we have a public hearing on Resolution 22-384 related to the 2023 to 2028 six-year transportation improvement program. Mr. Vicente.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Tonight, I'm going to be presenting the six-year transportation improvement program for 2023-2028. To give you a little background, this document is required by RCW 3577010, requires us to prepare this program, which identifies where we're going to be spending our funds for transportation projects in the next 6 years. The plan needs to be consistent with our current comprehensive plan. So this one was made current with the 2015 comp plan. We have to do this update every year. It's required to be completed or updated by the end of June and reported to the state in July. Again, the TIP is a planning document, so it's not financially constrained. So the numbers you see in there are not something that we are held to. It's just strictly for planning purposes so that we can identify where we think we might be spending the money in the next 6 years. Again, once this is approved, it is forwarded to the Washington State Secretary of Transportation. Again, a public hearing is also required prior to approval. And the local funds used within the document were based off of the current approved CIP. Just to give you a rundown of the projects that are identified in the TIP. So project number 1 is SR 522 West B. Wondering if I can go right in this area. And that project currently has $2 million in funding, and our general scope at this time is looking at trying to make some pedestrian improvements. We used to have more money in that project, but we gave some of it away to help fill the funding gap with the West Spanish River Bridge. And so right now, just based off of $2 million, we're looking at trying to make some ADA connections to the Burke-Gilman Trail and to fix the ADA issues on the sidewalk that go along the south side of 522. I indicate in the tip that we might be getting additional funding. We have to apply for grants. If we get the additional grants, then we'll align more closely with the original 522 West B scope, which was looking at adding an amenity strip, replacing the sidewalk, extending it past the dental buildings, and also possibly looking at undergrounding the utilities. Project number 2 is, of course, the West Spanish River Bridge. It's still showing on the tip because we do have expenditures next year, and so I still have to report that, so that's why it's sitting on there. We're all pretty much familiar with that project, so I won't go into too much detail. Same thing with the 68th Avenue project. That project is slated to be mostly complete this year, but we will have expenditures next year. So again, it's showing up. And again, similar with the Juanita project, it is going to have expenditures next year, and so it has to show up on the tip. Pavement preservation, we're looking at 73rd Avenue from 181st to 192nd. That project is expected to be done next year. Number 6 is our ADA transition program. I do want to clarify that within the current CIP, we have the sidewalk program and the ADA program combined into one program. I've split these out for simplicity's sake, but they are that one program noted in the CIP. So the ADA transition plan, in this particular CIP or TIP, we're proposing to utilize the funds, I can't get this mouse to work, right here as part of the 73rd overlay. That's the sidewalk replacement that I mentioned to you last year for that project. And then the remainder of those funds will just depend upon what we determine as a priority based off of the next funding cycle, this next CIP budget we go through. Number 7 is the 61st Avenue Sidewalk Replacement Project. This project, right there, we've got roughly $1.5 million currently available to us, and that is for replacing the sidewalk on the east side of 61st and also a couple of RRFBs at 193rd and 60th. There's an additional $3.5 million that we have been awarded through the state through the, I forget the name of the funds, Move Ahead funding. Unfortunately, those funds are not going to be, I just found out today, those funds are not going to be available until July 2023. So that gives a slight delay. And so I'm talking with WashDOT to see how I can work those funds. I may delay the whole project till 2025. It would be a lot easier to do and better cost, economic scale for cost expenditures. But depending on what they say, I may have to split the project into 2. Get one completed in 2024 and the other one in 2025, 2026, depending. So project number 8. So this is the Lower Swamp Creek Bridge on 175th, just next to 522 there at 80th Avenue. Right now in the project, we're just looking to update the current or update the bridge rating and update the bridge alternatives analysis. We did a study on that bridge in 2015. And according to the study, it said that we should look to replace the bridge within 10 years. So I'm this year going to reevaluate and see if we still need to replace in 10 years. And if we do, then it's within the TIP, it's slated for replacement in 2025. But pending what the analysis on that study will then tell me whether or not I have to replace it. And if I have to replace it, then we'll be looking at funding options for that project. Number 9 is the sidewalk program. I've identified this 84th Avenue sidewalk underneath of that project. And as I mentioned in the sidewalk program, I was going to be applying for grants from 150th to 155th on 84th. Same issue with Arrowhead. I've also indicated I was going to apply for grants for Arrowhead from 64th to, what is that, 150th? Can't remember, 153rd. I got one wrong. And then the other one is we've got 192nd from 75th to 73rd on the north side. That's also another project that I applied for grants this year. And then that's it for that 9. And number 10 is the 80th Avenue sidewalk. I applied for grants funding for this one from about 179th up to 185th where the toll trail area is. So that one sidewalk on both sides of the street with bike lanes, 2 RRFBs at the 2 locations where there's school bus pickup, and then doing some additional work with curb ramps, upgrading those to meet ADA. That's what that project is. Then number 11 is Simon's Road, another one I mentioned was going to apply for a grant. This is from 88th to 152nd. It's closing the gap from the sidewalk in front of the school and down here on Simon's. This is also an area where school kids get picked up, and so that's when this is also number 1 on our sidewalk program. So I did a grant application for that one. The next one is 73rd Sidewalks, which is up here. This is going from 192nd to 201st Place to connect into the existing sidewalk on the east side of the street. This project would have bike lanes, for the most part on both sides of the street. We're looking to try and use the existing shoulder on the west side to make it available for bikes. And then this would also have an RRFB at Wallace Swamp Creek Park, so that folks on the east side get to the west side and back and forth. Again, I applied for grant funding for that project this year, and that was number 7, I believe, on the sidewalk program. And then the final one is Northeast 181st Sidewalk. In previous tip, I had gone all the way to 65th, but in this one, I'm reducing it to 61st to 63rd. The main reason for that is Sound Transit has made a preliminary proposal to give the city $1.5 million to build a sidewalk on the south side of that street. And so I've made that just its own standalone project. So before we go to our recommendation, I'd have the mayor open it up for public hearing.
I declare the public hearing on resolution number 22-384 related to the 2023 to 2028 6-year transportation improvement program open. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. We have no on-site guests wishing to give public comment, but we do have Chris O who raised his hand. Chris, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear?
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, I guess I just have a question about the Sound Transit funding for Northeast 181st. My wife and I walk along Northeast 181st with our kid quite frequently. It's not the most comfortable connection to walk along at this point in time. And would that mean that the standalone project would be completing the sidewalk down to 65th into the downtown core separate from the city project? And then I guess I've got a few other comments that aren't related to that. That was just my final curiosity, which on the 73rd pavement repair project, would there be sidewalk improvements along that project? Or is that something that's going to be evaluated that could be done as a portion of that project? And as far as ADA access to the trail at 61st and 522, I think this is the first item that was discussed. Currently, the existing path down is extremely steep. Are they looking at any forms of longer ramp that would allow for a ramp of some sort, at least, that could actually feasibly meet ADA grade from 61st to the Burke Gilman Trail? Or are these things that are kind of still in discussion or haven't been considered yet? Anyways, I'm going to yield the rest of my time, mostly just questions. I might send you guys an updated email. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have their hand raised?
Yes, Janet Hayes, followed by Stacy V. Ms. Hayes, can you hear us? Janet Hayes.
Yes. Hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Janet Hayes and I'm a resident of Kenmore. I live on 181st and 63rd. When you say that is, does that mean you will just be going from 63rd with sidewalk on the south side down to 61st? We have a Hope Link on 63rd between 522 and 181st. And when there are children there, they do attend school. And there is a bus stop that is right on 181st for the school bus, morning and in the afternoon. And I'm thinking of those kids who I've seen, some do head up the hill too. but this has become a pretty busy street for traffic that has discovered it coming up and using it like it's 522. So I'm hoping that you can have at least one side with sidewalk all the way down to Kenmore, down to 65th would be really ideal. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy V, followed by Vicky Grayland.
Stacy Valenzuela Kenmore, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. In regards to the sidewalks, I'm especially concerned on 181st as well as 73rd. And part of that is because the streets are so narrow, and I do not believe the 5 foot of sidewalk should be there, plus a planter and a bike lane. I think it should be smaller sidewalks for the safety of all that are involved. And I also am concerned about how many feet that means that you're taking 6 to 8 feet in eminent domain away from each of those property owners in those areas. And that's a huge concern as well. And a lot of the residents were concerned about that and spoke up earlier about having part of their property taken away for these things. And I don't think, again, that wide of a sidewalk needs to be taken up on narrow streets to where it causes accidents. And just in the future, we're going to have to be tearing up a lot of the problem sidewalks that are too wide. And that goes as well for other obstacles like the big bulb curbs that are going to cause accidents because they're too far out in the street. And it could be done without going out that far. I also saw today, I think it was on 64th, where all of a sudden a handicap plate comes out of no sidewalk on the side of the road. And right next to it, the traffic line goes from 3.5 feet down to 1.5 feet for pedestrians to walk on. And those kind of things, I think, need to be corrected too, to where the line should be consistent on the same area of the street. And we had that problem and reported it up on Simons with the 2 or 3 redos that have been done to try to get those lines to where they match up and the sidewalk matches up and the bike lanes match up. So I think this is important to look at before the cement is poured, as well as how much greenhouse gases that's going to cause, rather than using some other way to mark these lines of where it's safe to walk. Thank you.
Thank you. Vicky Grayland?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'm Vicky Grayland and I live on 73rd, just north of this project that was mentioned. I have lived there since 2010 and I've seen a lot of people walk in front of my house. Gravel is in front of my house. People usually make a pathway and no one has ever complained about the little grasses that grow up, although I do try to trim them back pretty regularly. I think that gravel is a really better solution than concrete, of course. Being an environmentalist, of course, I would think that way, because we don't need more impervious surfaces. As people have stated in this meeting earlier, and I'm saying it again, why so much concrete in Kenmore? Has anybody said, gee, I really want more concrete on 73rd? I don't think so. I would like to say it's a good idea to have a pathway across 73rd to the park. I think that could be a dangerous situation, although I don't know if you had a traffic study about the safety there. I personally feel that it's a good idea. All right, thank you. Good night.
Good night to you, Ms. Grayland. James Olson?
There we go.
Hold on,
Hear me now?
we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yes, I heard someone concerning about narrowing of roads to, and trying to avoid that to improve safety. That's backwards. Narrowing roads improves safety. It causes people to drive slower. It causes people to pay attention. So not widening sidewalks and making it so pedestrians are in greater danger so that the roads can be wider so that cars can drive faster and not pay attention is foolish. You need to reduce the widths of the roads. Even narrow roads, you should look at how narrow can they be? Because again, if the road's narrow, those that are driving are going to drive a lot more slowly. They're going to be a lot safer. A lot of the complaints I see that come from people are people who like to drive fast. If people are really interested in safety, they should want narrow roads because it causes them to drive slower. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Herbig, I see no additional hands.
Is there anybody else wishing to be heard? Anybody else wishing to be heard? The last call, anybody else wishing to be heard? All right, I'm declaring the public hearing closed.
Mayor, if you'd like me to address the questions from the hearing, I can.
Is this coming up in this? Yeah, you're coming up in a couple items, actually. So we can discuss it then.
Yeah.
Okay. Next on the agenda is Ordinance 22-0551, amending Kenmore Municipal Code 13.35 to adopt the 2021 King County Surface Water Design Manual and amending Kenmore Municipal Code 13.45 to adopt the 2021 King County Stormwater Pollution Prevention Manual presented by Environmental Services Manager Richard Sawyer. Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you. Yes, so as I just provided in my introduction to the public hearing, this ordinance will adopt the 2021 King County Surface Water Design Manual and the 2021 King County Stormwater Pollution Prevention Manual, which will comply with our NPDES permit requirements to adopt an equivalent program to Ecology's Surface Water Design Standards by June 30th of 2022, as well as align with our goals and policies that we've established in the city's comprehensive plan. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and then staff is asking for a motion to adopt this ordinance.
All right, questions for Mr. Sawyer. Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you. Were there any regulations that the administrative agencies mentioned by Ms. Valenzuela or any other that you know of had recently put forth? Were there any new regulations or any reason not to think that this is the most up-to-date guidance that you've got?
I am not familiar with what was mentioned. The Department of Ecology's manual was adopted in 2019 and went through extensive public review and comment through their adoption process. And then King County subsequently went through their review and adoption process to gain that equivalency, which was granted by Department of Ecology in 2021. So I wouldn't doubt that there's always new and emerging research and technology is improving, but as far as the manual adoptions, those slowly get adopted. So if something new has come along, Ecology is reviewing that would be accounted for in their next manual adoption, which will probably be a couple more years out. And then again, King County would follow suit, and then we would follow suit again later. And that cycle is approximately every 4 to 6 years.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Sawyer? Okay, seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 22-0551 to update chapter 13.35 of the Kenmore Municipal Code and adopt the 2021 King County Surface Water Design Manual, update chapter 35.45 of the Kenmore Municipal Code to adopt the 2021 King County Stormwater Pollution Prevention Manual and revise chapter 13.32 of the Kenmore Municipal Code related to surface water definitions.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Baker.
Aye.
Councilmember Shrubnik. Yes. Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler.
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
Councilmember File.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Okay, next on the agenda is coming back to the resolution 22-384, adoption of the 2023-2028 six-year transportation improvement program, presented by City Engineer John Vicente. So, Mr. Vicente, did you want to address some of the questions that came up during public comment?
Yes, I'd like to do that. One of the questions revolving around 181st. So as I stated before, we're proposing to put sidewalk from 61st to 63rd on the south side of the street. That was funding that Sound Transit had indicated they would provide to the city to build that. Hence, it ends at 63rd because they're only proposing to give us $1.5 million. And my original cost estimate to build sidewalk to 65th was, I believe, about $7 million. Just because of the steep slopes and the walls that we require, it's a very expensive proposal. One of the reasons why I haven't been aggressive yet in going after funding for that is the fact that to qualify for a lot of funding, your roads need to be on the federal classification list, and 181st is not from 61st to 65th. So I'm going to look this year to see if I can get approval to get that classified so that it will qualify for grant funding. The process can take up to a year to get approved. So I need to start that process and hopefully have it done before the next funding cycle next year. So that's the main reason why we haven't been too aggressive on that and why this one is showing up, because we have already been given funding for, or we're supposed to get funding for that. We're still waiting for Sound Transit to formally let us know that. The SR 522, the question about if we're going to do some better access to the Berkman Trail, that was the intention of the $2 million we have, is to do switchbacks or something that's ADA compliant so folks can get down to the trail or get up from the trail and go where they need to go. So that is the intent of the $2 million, to at least do something like that as a bare minimum. So we need to coordinate with King County Parks to get the permissions to do what we need to do. There's a few other issues because there's wetlands down there, so it gets a little bit tricky, but that's our intention, to at least make that connection so folks can get down there easily. 73rd. So one of the questions was, are we going to replace the sidewalks, from 181st to 182nd? Yes, we're going to be replacing all the difficult locations along that corridor, making it accessible. Regarding the proposed project north of 192nd, there is sufficient right-of-way there to build the improvements per our standards and the road standards. So there's no, as far as I could tell, there's no need to do any kind of eminent domain along there. We might need some temporary access issues just so that things can be connected better, but as far as I could tell, there's plenty of right-of-way there to build what we need to build. And the comment about why concrete, why not do gravel? The biggest reason is ADA accessibility. When it comes to gravel, you really can't get good ADA accessibility. And if you can, you have to maintain it almost probably weekly, just so that it is accessible. We don't want to deny access to to folks that need that accessibility. And so gravel is not something you want to use. You want to use some sort of hard surfacing. In regards to the impervious surfacing, you can use pervious concrete. The big issue with that is that you can only put it in certain areas where the ground will infiltrate. So if you can't get the ground to infiltrate, pervious, solid doesn't work. So as an alternative, what we propose, one of the reasons why we have the amenity strip is that we let the sidewalk drain to that infiltrates, and that takes care of some of our issues. That's always the hope. Sometimes we get sloping and it hits the driveway and goes into the street. But one of the reasons why we have that planting strip is so that we can get the water to flow from the sidewalk if we can't do pervious sidewalk. I believe those were the questions that came up. As I had mentioned earlier, the the transportation improvement plan is a reflection of the comp plan and is in alignment with our pedestrian facilities plan, which was adopted last month. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Questions, Councilmember Shrubnik.
I have a couple small ones. They're mostly presentation issues. Would it be possible going forward, you don't have to do it in this time, but to include in the tip an expected start date and just put, TBD for the ones that aren't, like funded yet completely. So that was one question. And then the other was just clarifying, I feel like I should know this, but why some projects that are PED safety projects are in this, but most of them, of course, are just in the pedestrian facilities plan and not in this. And so I was curious, why do some get elevated to the tip?
So regarding the date, if you look at so in the presentation, you want me to show the dates, and I can do that. The tip document itself, if you look at the table, it shows the years each is when it starts based off of the funding. So if you go at the top, it says which year funding starts, so you can tell when a project starts based off of when you see dollars in the table.
Just based on the dollars, okay.
Yes. And I keep it to the year because I kind of don't want to narrow it down too much because it is just planning. It's kind of hard to narrow things down that closely unless the project is in the CIP itself. So, and then regarding the why projects get in the tip versus if it's in the pedestrian facilities plan, the big difference. The tip says what we expect that we're going to spend in 6 years, and based off of the pedestrian facilities plan, the funding that we have and the funding that I think we can get, I put those projects into the tip. I can't put everything in the pedestrian facilities plan in the tip because there's no way we're going to do all those projects in 6 years. It's not realistic. And so I put in what I believe we can accomplish or at least start in 6 years.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I did see this table and I guess it was just not clear, and I feel like I'm kind of knowledgeable about this, but it wasn't crystal clear without reading the narrative about which ones are actually funded and moving forward. I mean, we've got a lot of hopes and plans, but only a few of these are actually funded, even though there's dollars extending out on many of these. So anyway, I was a little confused.
Yeah, I can take a look and see how I can rewrite that next time so that it's clear if a project is actually going to go. Otherwise, I see what you're saying.
Councilmember Marshall.
So here's a thought for a future connected project, not part of this, but just something I wanted to bring to your attention. On the Arrowhead Drive sidewalk, it's actually 154th, a little street through the neighborhood that's just south of Arrowhead Drive, where a lot of kids walk to take a shortcut to Arrowhead Elementary, and traditionally have. And also, of course, that street serves twice the houses as Arrowhead Drive because there's houses on both sides of the street, as opposed to Arrowhead Drive, which doesn't have the houses on the golf course and ravine side. But just an idea that if in the future we're looking at increased growth or density of any kind, it'd be good to consider a sidewalk for 154th.
Any other questions? I would like to, I have one comment really. I live relatively close to 181st and I've walked that street many times. And while I deeply appreciate Sound Transit kicking in to help us with a couple blocks, the parts that actually worry me are around the crest of that hill. From a sightline standpoint and from a pedestrian standpoint, it feels very unsafe because cars can kind of get on top of you relatively quickly. They might be going downhill. So that is an area between 63rd and 65th that I think warrants serious consideration. And I was a little disappointed to see this separate out. I understand your reasoning behind it and it's sound. I'm not arguing against that, but I really do think that we need that whole stretch sidewalked, especially with the increase in zoning that was put in place with the downtown plan and some of the projects going in along that area. Folks need to be able to walk on that section safely, and so that is something I really hope we will see in a future tip.
That is definitely one of my goals.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I used to walk that stretch when I managed the 62nd project and decided to walk up 64th because I didn't like it.
Yep. Any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any further questions, so the chair would entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 22-384, adopting the 2023-2028 six-year transportation improvement plan.
So moved, Councilmember File.
Second, Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing no discussion, would the clerk please take the roll?
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig,
Yes.
Councilmember File,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right, next on the agenda is ordinance number 22-0550, amending Kenmore Municipal Code 10.15.40.040, former speed limits retained, presented by traffic engineer Tobin Bennett Gold. Mr. Bennett Gold.
Hi, good evening, Council. I think I can keep this one real short. The purpose for amending the KMC is that we have some speed limits that were adopted when the city incorporated from when they were King County roads. Some of those speed limits were then explicitly stated in our code, and that prevents us from making changes, using changes to the speed limit, using the process described in the RCW, because then those new speed limits would then be in conflict with our code. So this simply takes out the explicitly stated speed limits so that we can change the speed limit to whatever is deemed appropriate by engineering study and approved by council per the process that we have followed before with council for the roads that are not stated. It lets us do that for any of the roads in Kenmore, and also has a few small language changes just to make sure that our code is consistent with the process in the RCW. So staff recommends to adopt the ordinance, and I can take any questions about it.
Do we have any questions? All right, that was a heck of a presentation. We have no questions. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 22-0550 to amend KMC 10.15.040, speed limits retained, to remove speed limits explicitly stated in the Kenmore Municipal Code, and to clarify the procedures for revising speed limits in Kenmore.
So moved, Councilmember File.
And I'll second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing no discussion, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember File,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right, next on the agenda is staff report.
Nothing to report tonight. Thank you.
All right, and then we've got council member reports and comments. I'm going to go down the line. I'll start with council member Baker.
Yes, I am currently at AWC. I am attending a number of meetings, and I will be carrying the city's flag in the Parade of Flags on Thursday.
All right, Councilmember Kugler.
Just two quick updates. I wanted to thank Councilmember File and all of our residents who volunteered to put together the Kenmore Pride event this past weekend. For those who are interested, also wanted to just put out a reminder that we are walking in the Seattle Pride Festival this Saturday, and people can still sign up. So hopefully they will do so I also wanted to mention that I did volunteer to help with the Sound Cities Association ED search as part of the Equity Cabinet. And that's it for me.
All right, Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you. I see there's still 16 people, looks like, online. I hope there's some members of the public on there. And for you, members of the public, I urge you, definitely get involved and watch next week's meeting. I believe it's going to be a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Yep, next week. And definitely tell your neighbors, tell people who are interested. It's a very important meeting regarding the missing metal and increased density for Kenmore. So very important, whichever way you fall on it, but you definitely want to be involved.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, two things. One, I think we're going to talk about fairly soon, which is trying to figure out what would be reasonable for voluntary remote participation in our meetings. So just kind of flagging that as something that we are looking at. And then the other is something that I hope I can get a second on. I think I mentioned it before, which is related to tenant protections. I'm wondering if staff and city attorney might, and of course, we would need council direction to do this, look into potentially whether we can restrict landlords from requiring 3 to 5 times income, 3 to 5 times rent in income as part of their screening criteria. What happens is that by requiring that much income, that can reduce accessibility to housing. So of course, we're not talking about rent control in any shape or form. We're talking about the screening criteria and whether there's any way to regulate that. So I'm wondering if I have a second to even introduce that topic.
You have a second from Councilmember File.
Okay, well, we have a second then. Do we want to have a quick discussion to decide whether we have consensus or majority to do staff work and bring that back? So I'm opening up for discussion. Councilor Shrubnik has made her point. Does anybody else want to speak about this? Councilmember File?
Thank you. Within our city borders, this is an issue that comes up fairly frequently. And even so with some higher end rental housing, where if the person doesn't have a usual type of income or what is considered usual type of income, they can be required to have 5 times the amount of deposit to place down. And we're just a walk across the way from that situation. Why that's a very discriminatory action. And I believe this is kind of, I'm not sure if the state had resolved this with type of income discrimination or a source of income discrimination or not. So I think this is a good question for our city staff and attorney to address, and an important and timely one, given the topics we have at hand.
Deputy Mayor?
I just would like to say I support this direction. It would be good to know as we're moving forward with our renter protections and understand if that is something that we can address. So I do support moving forward. Thank you.
I'm also in support of at least looking at it, especially when it gets to the, especially when it comes to the issue of folks with Section 8 or with other sorts of income being forced to have a higher percentage of income to rent. That sort of housing discrimination is, well, I don't think it's particularly okay in my book. Money is green no matter if it's coming from the government or if it's coming from somebody's job or if it's coming from a pension. So by my count, that's 4 of us in favor of bringing that back for discussion. So I believe we have direction for staff to add that to the docket at some point. Anything else, Councilmember Shevnik? Oh, Councilmember Marshall.
Does that mean that perhaps somebody who's on Section 8, or if they have any other lower sort of income, does that mean they could make a landlord charge less?
No, I don't think.
No.
I think the issue, at least what I've heard described, and again, this is something I think staff should look into. I've heard the situation described where somebody will come in and they have, the 30% or whatever it is, 3 times the income. But because some of the income is Section 8 or something else, the landlord will require 5 times the income instead of 3 times. And on some level, it is kind of discrimination.
But the landlord's original requested amount was being provided for somehow.
Right. It's just changing the income. Yeah, just not allowing them to have different income requirements based on income source. Councilmember Shrebnick.
So it sounds like maybe there's 2 issues. What I was raising was simply the amount of income relative to rent. And then it sounds like the second issue is maybe related to changing that percentage, changing that requirement if income is maybe a little less traditional. So, yeah.
I think that's, I think Councilmember Shrebnick spelled that out pretty well.
Mayor Herbig, Councilmember Kugler did have her hand raised.
Oh, yeah, Councilmember Kugler.
Oh, I was just going to voice my support as well of bringing this issue back. I have heard it several times brought up by renters in our community, so I think it's good for staff to look into. So thank you, Councilmember Shrebnick, for bringing this up.
All right. Anything further, Councilmember Shrebnick? All right, Councilmember File.
Thank you. Before I go into updates, I wanted to address another rental related issue related to the Growth Management Act from the legislation passed for HB 1220, requiring the city to plan and meet the housing needs of all economic segments of its current and future population. I received a lovely letter from our fine representative, Jerry Paulette, about this, recommending that we consider this with our work, as the required information should include move-in and application fees that can be done with a simple addition of business licensing reports. Reporting would prevent tenants from being disadvantaged and presenting proof of that rent increases exceeded its ordinance criteria of notice. So this sounds like something that had passed, and maybe the timing of it, we were not so aware of it. But it does sound like it's something that we can address possibly under our business cap. I would hope for a second. Well, actually, I guess I don't need a second, as state requires the cities to to do this work. So
yeah, we don't have Miss Bench here, but I'm assuming, Ms. Lukash, do you know anything about work that's being done on this?
I believe Debbie Bent is watching the meeting. We can promote her as a panelist.
Stand by, we'll see if she's ready or available.
I did forward Representative Jerry Paulette's letter to Ms. Debbie Pence earlier, and our acting city manager, Stephanie Lukash.
Ms. Bent, are you with us?
Thank you. Yes, if it's required by state law, the city has to comply. I must admit, I have not read closely Mr. Paulette's letter, but I'm happy to report back at a future council meeting as how the city will be complying with this.
Yeah, just on a quick read, it looks like it has something to do with our housing element of the comp plan. So,
right. So again, we'll be bringing the Planning Commission housing element forward, and I can verify at next week's meeting. how that complies with the letter received from Mr. Paulette.
Thank you.
There is one more issue raised with that letter, and that was on barring landlords from requiring persons under 18 with intellectual disabilities to sign rental agreements, as both a matter of preventing housing insecurity and likely homeless actions. And these individuals are not legally responsible anyway, but they rarely are made aware, let alone their families are. This is slightly different than something we considered earlier, but it's been pretty well described and defined by our fine state representative, Paulette. I would ask that we consider it.
I'm not seeing a second for continued discussion on that issue. Anything else, Councilmember Fowl?
All right, I'll move on to updates. I attended the Seattle Pride safety planning meeting in preparation for our city participation and our community participation. We are number 173. We'll be marching right behind a bunch of veterinarians and a fine, excited population. There's a lot of love for coming back to Pride and rejoining. Information will be going out to those who registered in advance, and along with t-shirt pickup and how and when to arrive. And so that information will go out a little bit later this week, and I'll work with Nancy Meehan to ensure that we communicate that outwardly with all those who registered. And there's still opportunity for time for people to join in the fun. So along with that, it's been a busy day. I had a hazardous waste MCC work session meeting. There's a lot going on with the structuring of the hazardous waste committee. And the National League of Cities LGBTQLO board meeting was earlier today. And we're preparing responses to some of the more egregious the hate legislation being proposed nationally. So with that, I will leave it there. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Nothing to add this evening. Thank you.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for the relatively efficient meeting, and also say I'm looking forward to marching in the Pride Parade on Sunday. Even bought some just really awful looking dad shoes because otherwise my back is going to be killing me after that. So I've got some New Balances. Looking forward to get my t-shirt. Looking forward to walking. It'll be a lot of fun. And unless there's anything more to come before us, it's the Kenmore Councilmember File.
I'm so sorry I had forgotten, but an unusual happening occurred on Saturday with the Pride event here in Kenmore. There was an unexpected Kenmore Pride parade. And so we would call that a Kenmore history was made on Saturday with a group of our guests who decided to walk with our banner and parade through part of Kenmore and around and back, choosing the route to lap around from the library in front of Safeway and back around, looping in front of the firehouse and back to Kenmore. So there you go. We got history made.
All right. Well, with nothing more to come before us, the Kenmore City Council stands adjourned.
Good night, Councilmember Baker and Councilmember Kugler.